Chazal say the Torah is called Tushiyah. We're going to learn tonight what Tushiyah means. But they say that the Torah is called Tushiyah because of three reasons. It weakens you, it was given in secret, and it looks like nonsense. Weakens you, hidden, and nonsense. So that's a strange resume for the Torah, but that's what Chazal teach. Rebbe Nachman says to us, and we're going to unpack this as we go forward, that exactly there, in the place that looks weak, in the place that looks hidden, in the place that looks like nonsense, right there in that very place lies the deepest foundation of our soul. And tonight, we're going to unpack the meaning of Tushiyah and understand exactly what Rebbe Nachman is telling us about this deep secret of the Torah being called Tushiyah. Welcome to the Shoemaker Report with me, Hoshea Allen. We've been covering part of Likutei Moharan, Torah 7, for the past couple classes. And what have we learned in quick review? We've learned that when somebody receives advice from another person, that advice is like seed, zera. It's analogous to the physical seed, but it's literally spiritual seed that can implant within us. Now that implanting within us generates a form of life. It generates vitality. It can be vitality in a sense for the sitra achra, which we call zoma, pollution, filth, contamination. And that's analogous to what happened in the Garden of Eden, right? With Chava and the Nachash, that she listened to his advice. That was like seed, like zera coming into her. And therefore, that engendered a certain spiritual force within her. That spiritual force is called zoma. But on the other hand, if we listen to the advice of a tzaddik, we listen to the advice of a great righteous person who's bringing down Torah from the upper worlds, and we allow that advice to implant within us, that's also a type of zera, also a type of seed, and that can also take root within us and give rise to spiritual life, to spiritual rejuvenation. And that's what we've been talking about the past couple of classes. Let's continue on. That was a quick review and see what the next few words in Likutei Moharan, Torah Zion, which is Torah number 7, what Rebbe Nachman says next after all that he's already discussed. He says the following: Uvishvil zeh haTorah Matish Koach. He says, because of this, because of everything that we've just covered over the past couple classes, because of all that I've just summarized in a few words, that's why the Torah Matish Koach. What does that mean? It means weakens a person. Matish means to weaken or to sap the energy from. And Koach, right? Koach is your power, is your strength. So it's really saying, he says, for all that we've said today, you may say, what's the connection? Well, we're going to unpack that. But so far, let's just read Rebbe Nachman's words. He's telling us, for that is the very reason that we've just been learning about in the past 3 classes. For that very reason, the Torah, what does it do? It weakens a person's strength. Wow, it's kind of like, what's going on here? Then he quotes from the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin, page Chaf Vav, which is page 26 on Amud Beit. And he says, which brings down the following. It's also called the Nikret Tushiyah, which is what we opened our class with tonight. The Torah is called the Tushiyah. There's different psukim that directly call the Torah Tushiyah. We're going to read one tonight here, but there's other psukim. We're not going to go into a whole big full-fledged study about every place in Nach where the Torah is called Tushiyah. But the Torah is called Tushiyah. Let's go on. Kihem Taryag Etim. The Torah are the 613 commandments, here called Eitzim, Eitzot, pieces of advice. We talked about that a couple classes ago. Why are the mitzvot called advice? Because they are advising us how to draw close to Hashem, how to actually have devekus, or to increase our devekus with Hashem. That's the purpose of the mitzvot, is to draw us close to Hashem. And in that sense, the Zohar calls them Eitim, Eitzot, advices. Strategies, maybe is a better way to understand the word Eitzot. That the Torah is made up of 613 strategies in order to help us to get close to Hashem. Now here's the pasuk, one pasuk where the Torah directly says that the Torah is called Tushiyah. And it's in Mishli, which is Proverbs, chapter 8 and verse 14. And it says the following in part, Li Eitzah v'Tushiyah. With me, meaning with the Torah, is Eitzah. That's what we've been talking about all along. Counsel, strategies, advice. And Tushiyah, which is usually translated in the normal sense, wisdom, sound understanding. But there's much more to the meaning of this word than just, its surface meaning of sound, wisdom, and good understanding. Let's go on with what Rebbe Nachman says. Ve'etzot hem bimkom nisuin. That's what we talked about the past few classes, that the counsels, right, is in place of marriage. That's what we talked about the past couple of days. Remember about how the aspect of receiving advice, receiving zera, receiving seed is like, it stands for marriage. And that's zivug, which is what he just says next. Bechinat zivug. Zivug is intimacy. It's combining one with the other. A male and female combining together as a pair. That's zivug. And then he says Matish Koach. That's what he started off with. That the very act of intimacy, we'll call it that to be polite here. The very act of intimacy, marital intimacy, what does it do? It Matish Koach. It weakens or it saps the energy of a person. It saps a person's strength. Now, what's going on here? I mean, it's all very nice. I sort of maybe understand it on the surface, but the most fundamental question is, why is Rebbe Nachman bringing this up here? He hasn't been talking about this so much. He hasn't been talking about how the act of zivug, or the act of tashmi shemita, the act of using the bed, right, marital intimacy saps one's energy. He hasn't been talking about that up to this point. So why all of a sudden does he discuss it now? What's his point? What is he really saying to us? And in these couple lines, he's saying an enormous amount of real deep secrets, but it's so dense and it's so packed together that literally it's almost impossible for us to understand what he's saying unless we unpack it. And that's what we're going to do now. The question here is, what does this topic of Matish Koach, sapping one's energy, one's strength, what does it have to do with the whole topic of receiving counsel from people and having that counsel really take root in us and creating a whole new structure, a whole new life force in our own life? What does one got to do with the other? So since Rebbe Nachman quoted from Sanhedrin, from the second Sanhedrin, page 26, let's go and read exactly what that section of Gemara says in the second Sanhedrin on page Chaf Vav Amud Beit. So this is the next part of your notes. Amar Rebbe Chanan. So Rebbe Chanan said, Lama Nikra Shema Tushiyah. What's the reason why it's called Tushiyah? The it obviously is the Torah. That's been the discussion before this in the Gemara. He said, what's the reason why the Torah is called Tushiyah? Well, Rebbe Nachman already answered the question, right? Because it saps somebody's strength. The answer here is, let's read it. Mi penei shehi mateshet kocho shel adam. Now, this is very similar to the wording of Rebbe Nachman. Rebbe Nachman says it matish koach, it weakens the power of a person. And here the Gemara says mateshet. He just puts it in the more technically grammatical form, the feminine, mateshet versus matish. Mateshet kocho shel adam. He says the reason why the Torah is called Tushiyah is because it is mateshet, it weakens the power of a person. Okay, that's what Rebbe Chanan says. He doesn't explain what it means, he just says it. And this is so typically Chazal, right? Chazal makes a lot of statements throughout the Gemara and other places, which are, I'll call them cryptic, little nuggets of wisdom, but oftentimes they don't unpack it. They just say it. And then it's the job of us and our great sages over the years to help us to understand what in fact Chazal was hiding in that little nugget, those few little words. What are they hiding there? Because Chazal could have explained it, written a big essay, had taken an entire page of the Gemara and explained the entire thing, but they don't. So therefore, the Chazal words things in such a way that it's there, but it's hidden. There's a revealed aspect of Chazal's words. What's the revealed aspect? The Torah weakens a man's strength. It saps a man's strength. That's just on the very surface. That's the revealed part of what Chazal say, but it doesn't say what it means. What does he mean it saps my strength? Chazal doesn't tell you that. That's the inner part of those words, and that's not so clear. That's what we need to understand. Let's go on with the Gemara. Devar acher, another explanation of why Torah is called Tushiyah. Tushiyah, why? Shnitna b'chashai, mipnei satan. The Torah is called Tushiyah. Why? Because it was given in secret. quietly, through a whisper. Why was the Torah revealed in a whisper, quietly, secretly? Because of the Satan. Because of Satan, if you want to pronounce it that way. All right. Now, I say all right, but it's like not all right. What's that got to do with the previous thing? And what is that even talking about? We'll see. But let's just get all the data points together, and then we'll begin to explain it once we can see what's all being said. But anyway, the second point is, there's another reason why the Torah is called Tushiyah, and it's because it's connected to the word whispering, quietness, Hoshea. You can see there's similarity in the letters, not a lot, but there's a shin and there's a yud. But the main point is not so much a similarity in letters as it is a similarity in concept, and that's what we're going to have to unpack as we go. Devar acher, a third explanation why the Torah is called Tushiyah. Tushiyah, devarim shel tohu, ha'olam mishutat aleihem. This is a great, great pillar, a tremendous mystery. What on earth is, first of all, what do the words mean? The Torah is called Tushiyah because why? Because the Torah are words, devarim, words of tohu. What's tohu? You want to understand Tohu, you go all the way back to the beginning of Bereshit. Hashem created the world, Tohu uvohu. Tohu and vohu. What does all that mean, Tohu and vohu? Well, Tohu means like emptiness. Nothing there. Tohu, it's just like almost confusion. The Torah is likened to confusion, to nonsensical stories. That's where we started. We said nonsense. Tohu, just something that doesn't make any sense. It's all just a balagan. The reason the Torah is called Tushiyah is because why? Because it's made up of words of Tohu. But, listen to this. Awesome statement, which is going to be the key to understanding the whole secret. Sheha'olam mishutat aleihem. The whole world is established, is founded on a foundation of all this nonsensical Torah. That's what the Gemara says. Now, first of all, we're faced with a lot of questions, but let's at least deal with the simple ones first. Number one, we need to understand why Rebbe Nachman is bringing up this idea of Tushiyah in the context of eitzot, of counsel, of listening to people's words, and of Chava listening to the Nachash. Okay. Keep that in the back of our minds. Number two, we just learned that there's really three faces to Tushiyah. And that's what we began with. Tushiyah is related to weakening somebody's strength. Tushiyah is also related to something given in secret or private. And think about that too, because private, secret, is also reflective of intimacy, which relates to zivug, or the act of marital intimacy. And then you have this third aspect, which is something grand. Not just that it's weakens somebody, not just that it's given in secret, but that it builds the whole world up. Not just the plain, obvious words of Torah, but the nonsensical words of Torah. That's what the Gemara is telling us. That's what Chazal said. Chazal is telling us that it's not just Stam Torah that's the foundation of the world, but it's the nonsensical words of Tohu. That's Davka, the foundation of the world. All the stuff that people read in the Torah, they think, what is the meaning of this? This is nonsense. Ridiculous things that sound ridiculous on the surface. We'll see an example in a bit. But all that stuff that doesn't seem to make any sense. You can read the Gemara the same way. There's all kinds of very strange stories in the Gemara, all kinds of weird agadita, all kinds of strange medicinal the therapies of, I think it was Abaye's nursing mother who raised him. All kinds of really weird stuff. The Chazal is telling us in all that weird stuff and all those weird, not the plain normal words like weird tzitzit, love your neighbor as yourself. Not that. In all the weird, strange words of Tohu, that Davka is what builds up and the whole world is founded upon. So it seems like we've got three unrelated ideas. So we need to connect them. Because Chazal is not playing a game with us, bringing down three unrelated ideas. It doesn't do that. They don't do that. Chazal is trying to teach us deep secrets. Rashi, in his indomitable style, here, very briefly, he begins to lay out for us how they're interconnected. The interconnectedness of them is going to come out, is going to unfold, not just through Rashi, but through the writings of the Ben Ishai, his commentary on the Talmud, which is called Ben Yehoyada. We're going to see it also there, and then we're going to come back to Rebbe Nachman and tie it all together. First comment about Rashi, and these are also in your notes, right? Rashi tells us Tushiyah. What is Tushiyah? Tushiyah, why is it called Tushiyah? Al Shem Sha'olam Mishutat. Rashi jumps right to the very end. He jumps straight to the third answer of Chazal. It's very strange because you think, well, go back and look at the Gemara. The first answer was, why is it called Tushiyah? Because it weakens a person. Second answer is because it was given in secret with a whisper. And the third answer is that it was the foundation of the world. Rashi jumps straight to that third point. He, in a sense, skips over the first 2 points. That's very strange. You should ask yourself, well, why is he doing that? But that's what he does. Tushiyah, let's read it again. This is Rashi's word. Tushiyah, what is Tushiyah? Al Shem She'olam Mishutat, because the world is founded al HaTorah, it's founded on Torah. V'lo Madeha Nikrei Tushiyah, and the people who learn Torah are called Tushiyah. Now, so you can take this a couple ways. One is, they're called Tushiyah because they have sound wisdom, right? They have good understanding, but also those people who learn Torah, they are themselves the foundation of the world. And when you think the word foundation, what sphere should you be thinking about? Give you 5 seconds to think about it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 fast seconds. You should be thinking immediately about Yesod, right? Because Yesod is the foundation. That's what Yesod means, foundation. And what is Yesod? Is the sphere of what? Of connectivity. And in the male, it refers to as male member on the physical level. So we're right back to the whole idea of Zivu again. Beginning to see how this is beginning to unfold. That's Rashi's first comment. Let's read his second comment. Now he goes backwards. Now he's going to the second point, which is, why is it called Tushiyah? Because of the Satan. We didn't explain that before. What do you mean it's called Tushiyah because of the Satan? Rashi says, Shuhu Mekatreg. He's the prosecutor. Right? He prosecutes, he accuses. So because he's doing that, what specifically was the Satan prosecuting or accusing Klal Yisrael of at that time when Moshe was receiving the Torah, and therefore it had to be given quietly in secret? Ve'amar, he said, Tistapek le'elyonim. Let it remain, just leave it there with all of the upper worlds. V'lo yemasru haluchot biyad Moshe. And don't let Moshe Rabbeinu bring the luchot down. Don't turn over the Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu. Leave it up there in the upper worlds. You guys down there in those lower worlds down there in the world of Asiyah, you don't deserve the Torah. That world down there is a filthy, dirty world of Tumah. You don't deserve to have the Torah brought down to there. You should just let it stay up there. And so that was the Satan's accusation. So as a result, what was the solution? Just give it over in quiet. Just whisper the Torah over to Moshe Rabbeinu. Don't let anybody know that you're giving it over to him. So what the Gemara is saying, it's saying in a sense that that HaKadosh Baruch Hu whispered the Torah to Moshe quietly. And these are secretive ideas. They're not to be understood literally. But in order to bypass the accusations of the Satan, in a sense, HaKadosh Baruch Hu whispered and gave over the Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu in secret. That's Chashai. That's the meaning of Chashai, which is related again to the word Tushiyah. All right. That's the second reason. Again, we're not seeing how it all fits together necessarily, but we want to see what Rashi is going to be telling us. And Rashi explains this aspect of words that are Tohu, which is interesting because that's going back to the third reason, which is on those words that are Tohu, on those words of the Torah which seem confusing and nonsensical, those very words is what the world is founded upon. Let's now see what Rashi says. Dibor v'kriya b'olama. These words of Tohu, what does it mean, Tohu? He's telling us what it means. Rashi telling us when the Gemara said that the words of Torah are Tohu, and that's what everything is founded upon, he said, what's Tohu? What do you mean Tohu? It's just stories. Stories, readings, speaking out things, reading, telling over stories, just general stories. V'chol dibor, ein bo geshisha mamash. He's telling us here that every one of these stories, there's nothing literally, physically, materialistically speaking in the words of the story. The story is just what? It's an outer garment. This is what Rashi's telling us. The story that we're reading on the outside is just the outer garment of what the Torah is really all about. There's nothing really inherently important about the story in and of itself. We need to understand Pshat. Why? Because Pshat is the doorway to understanding the deep Torah, which is what we need to know. We don't ignore Pshat. We need to understand the Pshat. We need to know what the words mean, but so that we can then uncover the deeper revealed, the deeper hidden Torah that's within that. Let's go with what Rashi says. Tohu. How's that? Like this Tohu. This is what he's saying. That's the meaning of Tohu. Tohu is just stories, general stories, livushim, clothing. There's nothing really to it at all. Even so, even though the Torah is the most important aspects of the Torah is those things that seem silly, olam mishutat aleihem, the whole world is founded on them. The very silliness of the Torah, the very nonsensical stuff of the Torah, the things that sound the most confusing, the most bizarre, the most ridiculous, those are the things that Rashi says the whole world is founded upon. Then he explains the meaning of the word Tushiyah from an acronym point of view. It's called notarikon. It means an acronym in English. He says notarikon, or the acronym of the word Tushiyah, is the following: Tav, which is Tav, Yud, Vav. If you take those three letters, that's how you would spell out the letter Tav, which is the first letter of the word Tushiyah. So it's Tav, but Tav stands for what? Tohu is what he's telling us. The Tav in the beginning of the word Tushiyah stands for the word Tohu. What are the first two letters of Tohu? Tohu is the Tav and a Vav. Okay, Tohu, To. Those two letters, To, Tav and Vav, are the first two letters of Tushiyah, which is also a Tav and a Vav. So this is not something even like mystical from Rebbe Nachman. This is not Zohar. This is a Rashi here. Okay, so Rashi is telling us that Tushiyah is coming from the Tav, which stands for Tohu, which is these ridiculous, nonsensical, confusing stories. And the first two letters of that are the first two letters of Tushiyah. And then he says, what about the rest of the word Shia? The Shia stands for the word Mishutat, because you can see Shia and Mishutat are related words. But Rashi is telling us that the word Shia is related to Mishutat. So what is Rashi doing? He's explaining to us the deeper secret of the word Tushiyah. He's telling us there's two components to it. The word Tushiyah in its deeper level means, number one, stories of Tohu, Torah of Tohu, coupled with just the opposite. Mishotat, building up. Those things are an actual foundation of the entire world. So again, Rashi's not giving us all the pieces of the puzzle, but he's giving us enough that we begin to see, wait a second, this is not simple. The fact that the Torah is called Tushiyah is not so simple. But more than that, what Rashi is telling us is these three different explanations in the Gemara. That it weakens a person's energy. Number two, that it was given in secret. Number three, that it's the foundation of the world. Rashi is telling us they're all connected. Don't think that Chazal is giving us three separate random answers of the meaning of Tushiyah. Rashi is telling us they're all interrelated. Now we need to know how they're interrelated. And that brings us to the Ben Yehoyada, which was written by the Ben Ish Chai. And from there, we're going to see exactly what Rebbe Nachman is talking about. So we need to understand that the word Tushiyah is itself a Torah paradox. Because how can something, think about this for a second, how can something which saps your energy, which is what Tushiyah means, right? It is Matish Koach shel Adam. It saps, drains the energy of a person. How can it be that something that saps the energy of something be what? Mishutat. Be the foundation upon which everything is built. You don't build you want to build a skyscraper. You don't build a skyscraper on sand, on something that's like weak and flimsy, on cardboard. You build a skyscraper on something that's strong, not something that's weak. The whole thing seems completely bizarre. All right, let's read what the Ben Ish Chai says. Tushiyah. What is Tushiyah? So he quotes the Gemara. Tushiyah shnitna b'chashai mipnei satan. He starts off with the middle explanation, which is that the word Tushiyah, meaning the Torah, was given quietly through a whisper to keep the Satan at bay. By the way, as a side point, this is the very reason why the tzaddikim will oftentimes clothe their prayers, almost making it look like they're not even really praying, so that the accusing angels looking at the prayer of the tzaddik thinks, oh, that's just nonsense. And Rebbe Nachman did the exact same thing. He told over at the end of his life all kinds of very bizarre stories, right? Sipurei Masiot. Why did he give over all those stories? Because he really wanted to clothe the deepest aspects of Torah in things that seemed foolish. But in that's the very foundation of the world. So the tzaddikim have always been doing this. And why? It's to prevent the forces of the Sitra Achra from seeing it right away, because they don't chop things so easily. The Sitra Achra has to see things like, plain. They don't have a lot of intuition. So if it seems like them on the surface, that's all they see. They see the surface and they see some tzaddik making a fool of himself, or they see Rebbe Nachman writing stories that doesn't seem to make any sense. They leave it alone. But the Gemara is telling us that's the true foundation of the world. All right, now back to the Ben Yehoyada. Perush, what is the explanation? Koach al Torah shebal peh. He's telling us that, first of all, when we're talking about the Torah here, we're talking about the oral Torah. The oral Torah, that's where you get a lot of the strange stories, like the stories of Rabba Bar Hanan, and the stories, like I mentioned before, of all the different therapies of Abai's mother that he gave over. All kinds of weird and fantastic stories that's really in the Torah shebal peh. Uma Shamar, and that which the Gemara says, Devarim shel Tohu, this nonsensical words, confusing stories. Nearly, it seems to me, he says, this is now the Ben Ish Chai saying, it seems to me, it's a very humble way of writing, it seems to me, B'siyata Dishmaya, he's being humble. He's also being very reserved. But when a great tzaddik like the Ben Ish Chai says, it seems to me with like God's help, I'm going to give you. He's saying this is what it means, but he doesn't say that because that would sound very nice. So he's a humble person. He says, it seems to me that's a good way to talk. Dekai ala Torah, so that this whole concept is really is about the Torah. Sheish ba kama sipurim. It's made up of all kinds of stories. She'adam haroa otam, that a person who sees the stories, or reads the stories, or hears the stories, choshav shehem devarim shel tohu. He just thinks they're like stupid stories, nonsensical stories of just a big bubblegum, a confusing mess. Nothing mesudar, nothing organized, nothing that makes sense. Just, what? Like that kind of thing. Lifi Pishutan, according to their pshat meaning. So he's telling us very clearly, this is what we saw, I think, last class, don't fool yourselves into thinking that the pshat is the true meaning of much of the Torah. You need to know the pshat, but don't, this is the Arizal said this, we quoted the Arizal last week, right? They said, don't fool yourself and don't allow yourself to be tricked into thinking that the true meaning is the pshat. Arizal says, no. That's just the clothing. And here, the Ben Ish Chai is saying the exact same thing. But people reading the stories or hearing these stories, they could allow themselves to be confusing that this is just stupid. There's 1/4 or something of the entire Gemara, maybe not 1/4, but a lot of the Gemara is just stories. And some of the stories are pretty weird. Like really weird. And on the surface, they don't make any sense at all. And if you try to understand them on the surface level, you will find yourself, going nowhere really fast. And trying to justify the supposed ignorance of Chazal. It's really a problem. It's a real problem. But if you realize, like the Ben Ish Chai is saying here, that these words of Tohu, that you get yourself confused thinking about them in terms of the pshat, and then he gives an example. Here's the one example he gives. The specific example that the Ben Yehoyada brings down is Ve'elu HaMalachim from Bereshit chapter 36. What is that? These are the kings. There's a section of the Torah which just lists 8 kings of Esav. The first 8 kings. So why? Why do we need to know that? What's the point of it? Seems kind of like nonsense. It's unimportant. Tohu. And in fact, and he says, the coyote, and things like that. Things that just on the surface have nothing to do with my walk, nothing to do with my avoda, nothing to have to do with the mitzvot. It seems on the surface it has nothing to do with anything important. That's devarim shel tohu. And the Ben Ish Chai says, don't fool yourself. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that the pshat is the meaning. It's not. Because who made the greatest mistake like that? It was King Menashe. He says it. V'kasher kintar Menashe b'chak. There's a story in the Gemara about Menashe, the king, the great Menashe. And he allowed himself to be tripped up by this very point. And he said, this is ridiculous. What is the point of this? There's no point to this. And as a result, you begin to see things in the Torah that you are concluding wrongly is nonsense. And therefore, that's just a doorway the Satan needs in order to say other things in the Torah are also nonsense. So it's not just a random point we're talking. This is a very important point, central to understanding the Torah and not becoming a heretic. Chas v'shalom. Be'emet. But really, truly, Haim Devarim Niflaim. These are wondrous things. They're not stupid things. They're not dumb things. They're not nonsensical things. On the surface, yes, they look that way. But deep inside, they're truly awesome, wondrous things. Sheha'olam mishutat alehem. That the whole world is founded on. This is what we said earlier. Rebbe Nachman said, the Gemara says, Rashi says, the Ben Yehoyada says it. They all say it. Complete agreement on this point. Shehem sodot elyonim. These are the highest secrets. And that's the real Torah. That's the real Torah. And we have a responsibility, by the way, to seek out that Torah. Rebbe Nachman says that many times in Torah Likutei Moharan. Rebbe Nachman talks about it. We have it, otherwise why would it be in the Gemara? Halavai, we just read through that and skim and move on. That's the deep stuff. Anybody can read halacha. I'm not saying this in an insulting way. It's not. Halacha is very complex, and it takes a lot of concentration and a lot of seichel to sort it out. But it's on a totally different level than these stories. These are deep spiritual stories. Very, very deep. Now, have you seen it yet? Has the light gone ding? So now, I can go back to Rabbeinu. We need to understand what Chazal said, which we now have explained. What is Rebbe Nachman really telling us? Remember, he started by quoting all this stuff, and he quoted it right after he explained all of this stuff about the Nachash and Chava and Zivug and Nisuyin, right? And Zera. What's the connection? So if you study this a little bit, you'll see the connection. Let me tell you what the connection is as far as I can understand it. Let's go back to where we started from and where Rabbeinu started over. Rabbeinu started from what? Receiving advice. Advice. And remember, the Torah is called, in the Zohar, 613 pieces of advice. So the Torah itself is the Eitzah. It is the Eitzah. And what is that? That's the Zera. That's the seed. So Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, which we just read about, was given in secret. It was given quietly. It was given over in a whisper. That's between Hashem and Moshe. When Moshe brought it down, it was a big revelation at Har Sinai. That's another matter. We're not talking about that. Don't be confused. We're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu up in Shemayim receiving the Torah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu so that he's not going to be constantly attacked and a source of accusations from all the forces of evil that don't want that to happen. That's Torah Sheb'al Peh. That's what the Ben Ishai said. He said, Dafka, it was the oral Torah. And that was given over in secret. And secret is an aspect of intimacy. When you are intimate with your spouse, you do it in the privacy of your bedroom, right? You don't do it chas v'shalom out in the open. Some people do it like animals. You do it, what? Intimacy is by definition secretive. That's why the second explanation of Tushiyah was what? B'chashai was given over in secret with a whisper. What is it alluding to? Intimacy. What is intimacy? This is the aspect of receiving the zera, the advice, which is the 613 mitzvot. And that's the aspect of zivug, which we said again many times before. Zivug is the pairing of the male and the female, the husband and the wife. And what did we learn back here in the Gemara? What does the act of intimacy do? It weakens a man's strength. It weakens you. What does that mean? Have we yet figured it out? It's connected directly to the third point, which is what? It builds the world. Because this is what Rashi tried to explain to us. It's what the Ben Ishai tried to explain to us. It's what the Gemara is trying to explain to us. And we still may have not get it. Rabbeinu is trying to tell us the exact same thing. And Rabbeinu is bringing it down on a personal level, which is his chiddush. What is this energy that's being sapped? And how is that being converted into the building up of the worlds? And how is that connected to the act of zivug? The answer is very plain now. It should be very plain. In a sense, we could say the following. We are allotted in our life, in our days, every single day, a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of spiritual power. That's your allotment for the day. Like you have a bank account. You get 100 credits of Koach. Now you can spend them any way you want. You can spend them on the gashmiistic stuff of your body, or you can spend them on the spiritual ruchnistic aspect of your life. You choose, but if you spend them downward, then you don't have them upward. If you expend them downward and you drain through physical act, through zivug, through receiving zera, through receiving advice, if you engage in that, if you learn Torah, which is what it is, accepting the Torah, the act of that, what does it do? It weakens the person's strength. What does that mean? It's draining the energy that's going downward. And now since you're draining the energy, that's what's meant by Matish Koach. It's sapping the energy that's going downward into the gashmiistic stuff of your life. And what are you doing? You're diverting it. You're redirecting it upward by the learning of Torah. And that's what? That's the building up of the worlds. That's what it's meant. That's why you can at the same time be Matish Koach. You can weaken the physicality, meaning you're denying the physicality in your life. To an extent, you're denying it. You're limiting it. You're only basically taking from this world what you need minimalistically. The minimum of the minimum is the ideal. Sleeping on a floor, right? Eating bread and salt. It's not me saying this stuff. This is what Chazal say. We may not like it, but that's what they say. And that's what they're talking about. The more we are willing to and able to and have the capacity to limit the gashmiistic stuff, the more that we don't put our energy into all that, then therefore what? Now you've got all that energy to go somewhere else. That's what the Chazal is teaching us. And all that extra energy that you're not using downward, now you have to build the worlds with. The spiritual worlds. That's what's meant by Tushiyah. Tushiyah is a combination of all these aspects. What do we say? It weakens you. Meaning what? Not weakens you, a weak person. That's not the point. The point is that it's draining. It's draining the energy that would be normally used for the physicality, and it's rechanneling it upward. And that's why the Torah was given in secret, because it's involved with zivug. It's involved with intimacy. And that's the eitzah. That's the receiving the eitzah. That's the zera. You see, it's all hopefully all this is beginning now, kind of shining in your mind. And what else is the third aspect of Tushiyah? It's those very nonsensical things that people tend to poo-poo or people tend to diminish their significance. It's those very things that are the things that actually build up the world. And those are the things that actually build up true Torah learners, real mukubalim, real righteous tzaddikim. All right, and that's it. And so that's what Rebbe Nachman is teaching us, and that's the answer why he dafka brings up this whole topic of Tushiyah right after he's been talking for the past couple sections in that Torah all about Zerah and all about Satan and all about Chava and the whole thing, because he's literally explaining what's really happening, not just cosmically. And this now, we can end on this. This is Rabbeinu's Chidush. When you read Rebbe Nachman, you have to ask yourself the question, what is his Chidush? Because he never just comes along and tells you stuff that you can read in the Gemara. He never just comes to tell you stuff that's already been revealed by Chazal and by other sages and by the Arizal and by Chaim Vital and on and on. He's not just bringing stuff that's already been written. He's giving you a Chidush. Thing is, we often just go whoop and we miss the Chidush. What's the Chidush? What's the Chiddush? Everything that we've been saying so far, that is mentioned in the Gemara, as mentioned in Pesukim, that is mentioned by, even in the Zohar, that is mentioned by the Ben Ish Chai, that is mentioned by Rashi, all of it is talking about this whole topic of Tushiyah on a cosmic scale. The Nachash, Chava. I call it, the cosmic scale, the big umbrella. Rebbe Nachman says, not just. We need to understand that all of that is playing out in every single one of us, all the time, day in and day out. It's the very fundamental fabric of how our soul is either built and repaired and elevated, or chas v'shalom, filled with tumah and destroyed. This is Rabbeinu's Chiddush. He's taking all of these Chazals and he's saying it's about you. It's not just about Chava. It's not just about the Nachash. It's about me and it's about you. And it plays out every single time we listen to anybody. It's like, whoa. Because why? Because every time you listen to somebody, you better be very, very careful whether you accept that person's eitzah. That's the zera. And that's why Rebbe Nachman said, we learned already, what do? You have to go to tzaddikim. There's no other way around this. You have to go to tzaddikim and listen to the words of the tzaddik. Otherwise, you're busted before. You will not be able to figure it out. We don't have that seichel to figure it out. You think we're smarter than Adam Rishon? We're smarter than Chava? They could see from one end of the world to the other. Who are we? Who am I? Nothing. I ain't nothing, but nothing of the nothing of the nothing. So I cannot rely on my own power in any way whatsoever, not in Parnasa, and not certainly when it comes to MS, not certainly when it comes to truth. So Rebbe Nachman says, you know what? You have to go to the tzaddik. What is the tzaddik giving you? Zera. He's giving you eitzah. He's giving you the seed. He's implanting true spiritual seed in you. And what is that going to do? It's going to create a life force in you, a life force to build you, to build the worlds, draining away your energy on nonsensical stuff, draining away your energy on gashmius, draining away that, and instead using that allotment of energy upward in the building of the worlds. All right, so until next time, have a great week. Don't forget to subscribe if you made it all the way through. And also, don't forget our book, which is Whispers from the Tzaddik's Heart, which explains a lot of these kind of things in a whole bunch of different essays. You can see it down in the description, a link to how to acquire the book for your own self and hopefully benefit more from these teachings. Until next time, have yourselves a great week.